Hello everyone, and welcome to Lesson 5.6, which is on solving two-step inequalities. Like we mentioned in Lesson 5.5, we talked a lot about solving one- and two-step equations in Chapter 4. I would go back and take a look at those videos if you want to be really set up to solve these problems, because we're using the exact same steps to solve inequalities as we did equations. However, I do want to remind everyone that we did talk about a special rule with inequalities and how we have to deal with those whenever we multiply or divide by negative numbers. So to check out that special rule and understand that, please check out Lesson 5.5. But for these problems today, we do have 3 steps that we need to do to solve every two-step inequality. Step number 1, we want to simplify. We want to distribute, we want to combine like terms, we want to get things into simplest terms before we start trying to solve and get things to cancel out. After we've simplified everything, we're going to move on to adding or subtracting. We'll use our opposite operations and addition and subtraction to cancel out some numbers. Then, at the very end, we will multiply or divide. So, it's simplify, add, subtract, then multiply or divide. And remember, if we ever multiply or divide by a negative number, there's a special rule that goes along with that. And to see that, check out 5.5. Okay, so let's get into our examples here. We have 4 examples on what we need to do. So again, our 3 steps are simplify, add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Now, to deal with this, our first step is to simplify. So we have 4 times, in parentheses, x minus 1 is greater than 8. So to simplify, we're going to use distributive property, and we are going to multiply that 4 times both terms inside the parentheses. That's going to give me 4 times x, and that's going to give me minus 4 times 1, which really just ends up being 4x minus 4, and then we just bring everything else down, so we have is greater than 8. Now that we have 4x minus 4 is greater than 8, we will use addition and subtraction first. So we're going to add 4. And then we get 4x is greater than 12. Our last step is to divide by 4. And that leaves me with x is greater than 3. All right. Moving on to number 2, we have negative 6x plus 9 is less than or equal to 27. Step number 1 is to simplify. We don't have anything to simplify. There's no distributive property to do. There's no combining like terms on the left-hand side. 27 is the only thing on the right-hand side, so we don't have anything to deal with there. So we can go right into step number 2. Step number 2 says that we are going to subtract 9 from both sides. Subtracting 9 from both sides gives me negative 6x is less than or equal to 18. And then our second step here is to divide. We're going to divide by negative 6. And that leaves me with x is greater than or equal to negative 3. And remember that we flip the sign because we divided by negative 6. And that's an important thing not to forget. It's going to keep coming back. We learned it in 5.5, and it's here again in 5.6. Okay, moving on to number 3. You can see that sometimes in problems we have a lot of things that we can do. So the first thing that we have is distributive property, right? We have 6 is greater than or equal to negative 5 times c plus 4 plus 10. So we start by taking this negative 5 and distributing it. That gives me negative 5c minus 20, because negative 5 times c is negative 5c. Negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. Then we can just rewrite everything. So 6 is greater than or equal to negative 5c minus 20 plus 10. Now right here, we can combine like terms. I'm going to highlight that negative as well. That ends up giving me Negative 20 plus 10 is just negative 10. We can rewrite everything to get our answer. And now we're on to solving a two-step equation. Our first step, now that we're done simplifying, is to add 10 to both sides. That gives me 16 is greater than or equal to negative 5c. And then our last step here is to divide both sides by negative 5. And since we've divided by a negative, we got to flip our sign. And that leaves me with negative 16 fifths is less than or equal to c. And I know that for some people, whenever we solve this problem out, we get a fraction answer that messes people up. But just know that fraction answers are okay. We can have fraction answers, but we just have to make sure we're doing our steps in the right way. And there were a lot going on in this problem, right? First, we had this distributive property action. So we distributed. Then we had to combine like terms. And then now we're finally into a two-step equation where we started with addition and subtraction, and then we finished it off with multiplication or division, and we ended up with our answer. As long as you're following the same steps, it's okay to get a fraction. If you want to check your work or you're not sure, feel free, but just know that fractions are okay. Okay, so now we're moving on to number 4. Number 4 says negative 11 is less than 20 plus 12x plus 101. So we'll start by trying to simplify the right-hand side. Notice that we have 20 and positive 101. Those can be combined. That ends up giving me negative 11 is less than 12x plus 121. All right, so then we move on to our next step, which is addition subtraction. We subtract 121 from both sides. On the right, that cancels. On the left, that ends up giving me negative 132 is less than 12x. I'm going to rewrite that over here just so we can see it better. Negative 132 is less than 12x. All right. Then our last step is just to divide by 12. And notice that we didn't actually divide by a negative number. We covered this in the last section too. We're dividing by a positive number. And anytime that we divide by a positive number, we don't have to flip our sign. So the 12s cancel, leaving me with x. The sign stays the same. And negative 132 divided by 12 is negative 11. And we're done. So, solving these problems are exactly the same as when we solved equations. The only rule is that if we multiply or divide by a negative, whenever that comes, we have to flip the sign. And as long as you remember to do that, then everything else is the same from Chapter 4. So hopefully this has helped you in solving two-step and multi-step inequalities. But if there's something that's unclear and you need more clarification, please reach out to me and let me know.